You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks, let's talk about what's happening in South Carolina. On his visit to Columbia, South Carolina, billionaire presidential candidate Tom Steyer singled out a target audience, black men. This is what he had to say.
75% of African Americans are in favor of reparations. Reparations for slavery and reparations for that which has come after slavery. All of those things that have kept us as a second-class position, second-class citizenship, and unequal justice, unequal wealth, and all. A lot of candidates have shied away from this for a long period of time. So what we would like to know from you, sir, is how do you stand on the issue of reparations?
So let me start by giving a simple answer, which is I'm for reparations. And let's talk about what that really means. Because in the United States, we've never really been willing to face the truth, as John says, not just of the hundreds of years of enslavement. We've never really been willing to face the truth about the 100 years of Jim Crow. And so that there's a history here that's been denial of the truth for literally 400 years. So when I think, look, I started the need to impeach movement because I believe Mr. Trump is a bad man. Yes. I think he's a criminal. And I think... So, the reason I'm running for president is this reason. We have a broken government in Washington, D.C. You know, and my opinion is, the reason we have a broken government is the corporations model. If you look at the problems we're having, somebody is profiting from it. We think it's terrible, but somebody's making a ton of money. You guys are paying really high drug prices to somebody. They like it. You know, if you look at this gun violence issue, but the NRA is run by the gun manufacturers. They funnel the money through the NRA, and that's why we can't get any kind of gun, sensible gun safety legislation. It's, if you look at climate change, look, it's an issue that I've worried about for over a decade and worked on and fought the oil companies on and beat them and fought the utilities on it and beat them. But there's a reason we're not dealing with this. We can have cheaper energy, we can be healthier, we can create millions of good paying jobs in every community in the United States, but it's bad for oil companies and natural gas companies and coal companies, and they are winning.
First, why did you choose Clinton College today?
Well, I think that we wanted to be an HBCU. And I think that we were trying to have a place where representatives from the African American community in North and South Carolina could come. I think I'm a progressive who's traveled this country full time for 7 years, talking to Americans the way I did tonight. So that's completely different. Also, he's a failed businessman. He's a fake businessman. Actually, I'm a successful businessman. It's completely different. One of the reasons I think I should be the candidate is I think in order to win, we're going to have to take Trump on and show him for the fake he was as a businessman and the fake he is as a president. That his supposed economic successes were actually huge failures, that he's a fraud, and that we have to take him down. And I'm the person who has, by far, the most experience in business and international business and economics in terms of all the candidates.
All right, folks, joining me right now is Meg Kennard. She's the AP politics reporter. Meg, glad to have you here in South Carolina. First of all, today, Steyer unveiled his HBCU plan, $125 billion. But the big issue is that he's actually running third among African Americans. What is happening in South Carolina?
Hey, Roland, it's always good to be with you. It does seem that Tom Steyer is starting to resonate with voters here in South Carolina. As you well know, as your viewers well know, this is the first place in the primary calendar where Black voters really have a significant voice. They comprise most of the Democratic electorate here. So, Tom Steyer's been on TV for months at this point, well before he even became an official candidate. he's been running his need to impeach TV ads. And when I go out and I'm asking voters, hey, who are in your top 3? And if they mention Tom Steyer, a lot of the time they're telling me, I've been seeing him on TV for a long time. And now he's coming to South Carolina and he's speaking to issues that matter to me. He's talking about economic justice. He's talking about climate change and how there are issues going on with that in their communities. So what I hear from voters is they're interested in learning more about Tom Steyer. Let's keep in mind, no one poll is going to tell us exactly what's going to happen. But there's a survey that came out recently that shows Tom Steyer polling 3rd here in South Carolina with numbers among Black voters that are higher than many of the other candidates who've been in this race for much longer have ever attained, more than Cory Booker and Kamala Harris put together among Black voters.
But the difference here is that what you say at the outset, it's money. Tom Steyer poured some $10 to $12 million of his own money into national ads saying impeach Trump. Then he gets in the race, and he is now, of course, he would be leading if Michael Bloomberg had not jumped in, but he has spent more than $50 million on TV ads. At the end of the day, he's inundating people. I saw one story where in Iowa and New Hampshire, they actually were getting sick of his ads because they were running so many.
He is committed to spending, I think the last number I saw is up to $100 million of his own money on TV ads and on these digital ads that people are seeing everywhere. I think he's spent more than twice some of his closest competitors when it comes to television, and certainly millions more on digital advertising. So you're right, there has been an influx in the market of all these Tom Steyer ads that other candidates simply can't afford. A lot of that does come from being able to spend his own money and to spend it how he wants. But it certainly seems that at least some of the voters I talk to, what he's saying, they like it and they want to know some more.
But the piece we have is here. The reality is, if you look at most of these candidates, the resources they have, they're going into Iowa and New Hampshire. And after Iowa is when you begin to see the shift of more resources into South Carolina. We know that Joe Biden is leading overall. Do you think that based upon what you're seeing is that you're likely going to see where a Sanders or even an Elizabeth Warren will still be in a strong position because they'll be shifting to South Carolina? Whereas if you're Steyer, bottom line is you're not making a real dent in Iowa and New Hampshire, so you got to go somewhere.
It's a good question, but Tom Steyer at this point is already also on the ground with staff and resources in 5 of the states at least that vote on Super Tuesday. So he already has his viewpoint shifted to the states that come quickly after South Carolina. I do think that depending on what happens in these early states, certainly Iowa and then New Hampshire, what happens there, I think, is going to have somewhat of an effect on certainly the mentality of voters and what they think about candidates. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't win one of those states, then you're just out of luck in the ones that follow. But a strong performance can seem to indicate to voters, they can see that, they can start to kind of develop a mentality of having that person as the nominee. And so it can start to flow to these other states. So, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen in those early states. But Tom Steyer has already put the resources in place. I think here in South Carolina, he's got the most of any of the early state staff. There's more than 40 staffers here, last I checked. So he's certainly ready for the votes to come.
All right, then, Mayor Kennard, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Always good to be with you.
I appreciate it. Kelly, what do you make of Tom Steyer and the money he's spending?
It's a lot of money. And I think it's a smart move in terms of getting the message out there, because I remember I think these have been running since early last year. Like, I've been seeing them for a very long time. I just don't want it to be a, what's the word? I don't want it to seem like pandering. Right. Because that's my biggest concern. Because what does reparations really look like? You can say that you support it. There's nobody running on the Democratic side who, verbally is against it. So what does reparations look like? What does how do you get $125 billion to HBCUs? I need to see something more substantive as opposed to the lip service from anybody. And with Steyer, I mean, you have almost over a year of lip service, if you really think about it, because it's, between the ads, the interviews, the campaigning on the ground, it's becoming almost as a gimmick, like a battle of the billionaires type thing, because he's the successful billionaire against the failed billionaire, and where do you go from there? So those are my main concerns.
Mustafa.
Well, Tom showed up for the Environmental Justice Presidential Forum that I did, so I appreciate that. Tom has also been, sort of introducing himself to folks. And, we've talked about this before. So folks got to be able to see you and touch you and feel you. And he's been going into the places all across South Carolina, from the Little PD, all the way over to Spartanburg and a number of other places. He even went to some of those places before he announced that he was going to run. So, most folks want to see you. They want to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you. Now, I think that there is a good point that we got to make sure that the policy is there. Elizabeth Warren puts out those policy plans, and you pretty much know exactly where she's going, what she's going to do, and at least somewhat how it's going to be funded. So I think people are resonating with Tom, one, because of the commercials, but two, because he's actually out there with folks trying to find out what's going on in their lives.
Mel-
I think this is something that we've seen before. With Steyer, it seems like this is another iteration of what we saw in 2008 and 2012 with Obama, what we saw in 2016 with Telly Lovelace and the RNC, the efforts that they were doing to actually go into what they call the barbershop tour. So Steyer is doing something similar to that, and I give him credit for doing so, but we would be remiss for not acknowledging that this is also something that Cory Booker and others are doing. Steyer, in this case, has about 10% of the vote in South Carolina, but what is, and the guest actually pointed that out, the reporter pointed that out, is that you have Tom Steyer at 10% and you have Cory Booker at about 2%, and I think Kamala Harris is about 0.34% of getting 0.34% of the black vote in South Carolina.
She's not running anymore.
Yeah, and some of that, I'm sorry, but some of that also is money, because they did not have the resources. Because when you're running for president, it's about an introduction of who you are. What do you believe in, and allowing people to get comfortable with you. And Cory and Kamala did not have the same amount of resources to invest.
But they had the name recognition.
No, they didn't.
But they did. In South Carolina, they had the name recognition.
Actually, they didn't, and that's the difference.
How did they not have?
They did not.
Carolina?
Follow me here. She's a senator from California. Right. He's a senator from New Jersey, and so this assumption that I know you, not true. The difference here, and this is where money does play, if I am all of a sudden in 7 days a week, first of all, let's deal with the fact that black people watch TV more than anybody else.
Which is why we know who those two are.
No, that's wrong.
But they do, Roland. You can't say that the people of South Carolina didn't know.
No, you're wrong.
Money helps.
No.
Money absolutely helps.
Allow me to finish so you can understand why you're wrong.
Yeah, well, I'll allow you to
Black folks
finish
watch television more than anybody else. So if you're Tom Steyer and you're spending money and dropping millions on TV ads 7 days a week, and they had no ads on television. So here you have an individual who I'm hearing on radio and seeing on television, and I'm not hearing over here. There are still places where Senator Cory Booker is going. Yep. Folks like, I don't know who you are. Right. And so this assumption that just because you're a black United States senator and you're in South Carolina and you're black, oh, I know you, that's just simply not true. Well, and so what Steyer is doing, it's the same thing Bloomberg. Bloomberg cannot, so even though he's been mayor of New York, there's no assumption everybody knows Mike Bloomberg. Right. So Mike Bloomberg also knows he can't get into the debates because he won't have the donors. That's why he's already dropped $100 million, because he's saying, I'm going to inundate the airwaves so you know who I am, and it's just beating into the head. That is the difference here. And so the issue that I said with Senator Harris and Booker, the reason they have had a difficult time resonating is because they were not known. And because they did not put the work in between 2016 and 2019, folks to know that, all of a sudden they jump in and it's like, hey, I'm here. That's why. They're not known.
Well, I disagree with that. I don't think that they're not known. They don't have the resources that Steyer has.
Have you talked to any of their staffers?
But I disagree.
Now, I'm asking you a question. Have you talked to any of the staffers of Booker and Harris when they were on the ground? Have you talked to any of them?
No, I have not.
I have.
Okay.
And let me tell you what staff has said. No, because there's a difference, Melik, between coming on air and giving your opinion.
But Roland,
and
you're arguing about something that I think is kind of nonsensical. The notion that black voters in South Carolina don't know who Kamala Harris and Senator Cory Booker are.
They don't.
Oh.
So I can chime in real quick.
Go
because
ahead.
I'm a little different.
That's
They
different.
don't.
That's different from having a money
No,
argument and
they
resources
don't.
to
If you
flood.
actually talk to the people who work on their campaigns, they will tell you what I'm saying is correct because they're the ones introducing them. Go ahead, Mustafa.
I spent a huge amount of time, brother, all across the country and especially in the South, and I'm having real conversations with Mrs. Ramirez and Mr. Johnson, and what they say is that it's not that they don't like Corey or Kamala, it was that they did not yet know them, and they're looking for opportunities to know.
I think that's a
all.
different argument about knowing them as far as their policies or anything like that. But the person, they absolutely know who Cory Booker
in general,
and Kamala
I mean,
Harris.
of course
Yes,
they know
do.
the name, but
until you actually introduce your policies or something, of course they're not
Okay.
going to know everything about that.
And let me just quickly say,
real
both
quick.
Corey and Kamala both have excellent policies, and they both would have made great presidents, depending on how this all turns out.
Bottom line is when you run for president, it comes down to money. And whoever has the most money, who can drive your messaging, guess what? Places where you can't go, money helps you in that way. And that's what you're now dealing with. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, it's the holiday season. This is when you think about spending time with your family and friends. This is also when you count your blessings and support those less fortunate. This year, you can become a holiday hero and change someone's life forever. Right now, hundreds of thousands of people are sitting in jail without being convicted of a crime. Why? Because they can't pay their bail. If you're arrested for any minor offense, you'll be taken directly to jail. If you don't have bail money, you will sit there until a court date is scheduled. That could be days, weeks, or even months. Simply put, America's bail system is broken for people of color. Freedom should not be free. So the Ebony Foundation is partnering with the Bail Project. They're sponsoring Home by the Holiday campaign. The goal is to get 1,000 people bailed out of jail by the end of the year. A donation from you can change someone's life tomorrow. So what they want you to do is simply go to Home. Well, first of all, you can donate $25, $50 or more to the Ebony Foundation. So go to homebytheholiday.com. It's homebytheholiday.com for you to help somebody get out of jail and be with their loved ones for this Christmas season. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.